422. That right down.
You have to sing it out loud so you can hear it.
You got to sing real loud in the back. He's there back there.
Is the orange button on? Button's awful loud back here. That went away. It was.
Page you said, Jamie.
422.
See? John can hear. He might have said that. I know.
That ain't right. Is that better, Dave?
I don't know what I'm trying to say. That might work.
Still sounds fine. Be a guitar player. There are things as we travel this earth-shifting sand that create all the reason of man. Other things that matter the most in this world, they can never be held in our hands. 433. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should laugh and trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and has shed His own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin on the bliss of His glorious dawn. My sinner in part left the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be signed. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall be seen. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. I've seen all the bliss of His glorious love. My sinner in part left the whole. It is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Man, oh man. Not in part, but the whole. nailed to the cross. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Oh, my soul. Amen.
That's 648.
648. Let's have an old-fashioned handshake and a neck hugging. Gather around the altar. Harper can't you to fly away, dude. Just good to walk. Some black morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadow of this life has grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from a prison bars that's flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more happy days and then I'll fly away. To a land where joy shall never end, I'll fly away. Fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. It's hard on a fat boy.
That was a little funny.
Huh?
That was just a little funny. You said that was hard on that.
Yeah, it's hard to breathe. Becky tells me that round is the shape.
I don't know where you noticed you're not a bottle of water, my darling.
Yeah,
It's about 300 now.
you've lost at the heart. Man. Let's not forget Sister Lynn. John, you want to give us an update on her?
And she's still kicking. Doing pretty good.
She's still in the hospital, though. She's shipped tomorrow, Friday.
Tomorrow, Friday morning, and so one big one blood work.
Anybody heard anything on Joe's mom other than she's in Riverside? All I know.
So I heard too, Jim.
Did anybody hear anything on Sister Shirley when she went to the hospital yesterday? I know, just saw she was at a demon yesterday. Ask me later. You know, we got revival starting in 10 days, and I'll just say the devil's tired. Don't want anything good to happen to the Lord. Amen.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Remember Ernie Sickles still?
Say one for another.
Yes.
Whatever I said.
Or I know she's still working.
Pray for Katie. Katie starts therapy in a week or so, don't you, Katie?
If a cheer up, I know you're cute.
I'll tell you why we go today. Mama goes back up tomorrow. When I say Mama, Sister Carrie goes back up tomorrow to meet with the surgeons on her heart and decide what they're going to do there. And just pray that God's will is done. That's the only way we can really pray. Yeah, man. For you that haven't heard, Sister Melissa did get her Social Security. That'll be a big help to that household. Pray for Brother Larry. Anybody heard anything, Brother Larry? Blessings. I haven't heard anything nice there, son. I haven't talked to Brother Jim, but remember him and Sandy as well. John is here. He still needs our prayer, though.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Remember Sister Donna? Poker request, if we could have him. And Larry would give you this one, we're all three.
Dear Lord, thank you tonight, Lord, that each and every one of these prayer requests that before you know. Father, we thank you for our privilege, Lord, to humble ourselves before you, Lord, just to bring our petitions before you, Lord. Father, you've heard each and every one of them, Lord, Lord. Father, just right now, Lord, what's going on with that, Father, Father, you know the testimony, each and every one of them, God, we're going to find, Lord, we pray for you, Lord. Even brother, you know that, we hear it, Father, right now,
Pray for revival in this country.
Lord, Lord, it's not,
Lord, thank God. Lord, the church as well, stir it up, Father, Lord, for the rich and God, Father,
and we pray for her, Lord, and strengthen her, let her be online so a little longer, Lord.
Like worship, Charlie, Lord, Judy, Lord, Mary, Sister Sandy, God, Saint Dalton, Lord, Charlotte,
On your God,
Sister Leanna, all these requests we hold in our hands, we know the great physician, Lord. Pray for Joe's mom, Jesus, God, just grant us a good report today, Father. Oh God, we love you, we praise you, we exalt you today, God, and all that you are, all that you're going to be, Jesus, God, before us today, Father. Thank you for what you've done, thank you for what you're going to do, Jesus.
All of them expecting the question when you up 60 and because the Lord has been sent down and he's supposed to
Yes, Lord, hear and answer our cry.
and he's in what they can do.
Amen. Anybody have a special song? Testimony. And then once you send Joe a message on your phone, see if you can get an update on his mom for it. Everybody in the church would like to know. We just prayed for her. We want to know how she's doing. Mr. Sue, you have a song? Charlie, you have a song?
I got one, but I wouldn't do any good trying to sing.
It's the effort that counts, ain't it? What I always heard.
Well, I could go to the phone with the music. I'm glad to be here tonight, Brother James. Glad we got through the chemo without no problem. I just continue to praise the Lord and thank Him for all that He's doing.
I know you look better today than what you have with the last ones. The last ones you hadn't actually been able to attend the day after, so we're thankful for that. It's good to see your smiling face. Anybody else have a testimony? All the time. God is good. All right, let's finish off. Mark chapter 5, is that right? 6. 6. I know it's 5 or 6. As you pray, remember the Easter program as we're working on it. And it'll come together. I know it will. God give the increase and God get the glory. That's what we're looking for. All right, Mark chapter 6. We stopped at verse 32, right? Stopped at verse 32. So we will start at verse 32, being the will of the good Lord. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. Remember, Jesus said, just as before this, Jesus has said, Come ye yourselves into a desert place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. Sometimes we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of Christianese, if you'll have it, that we, put undue pressures, maybe I should say, on ourselves. We got to do this and got to do that. The Scripture is teaching us there are times that we need to get away and rest. If you pay attention all through, have paid attention or think back, it's in Matthew, and now we're seeing it here in Mark, every time that there was a huge crowd and a lot of things had happened, Jesus would always steal away somewhere and pray. And it was a time of refreshing, if you'll have it. You know, when we get up and we get out, get ready, and we go out to work, and we've labored all day long, we don't come home and go back to work. We come home and we rest. You know, we feed the outer man, we bathe the outer man, and then we rest and get ready to go back for, what are you laughing about, John? Don't do that.
She's never home.
She's never, huh?
She's never home there when I do.
Yeah.
You don't get home till late. I
don't
work
get up.
from the time I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning all the way until about 4:30.
And then you take a nap till Deb gets home. When Deb gets home, you're ready to go, right? You know. So there comes a time that you've got to rest physically, and there comes a time that you've got to get away spiritually. It's not. The thing is go refresh yourself in the Lord, and then get back at it. Jesus didn't stay on the mountain talking with God. He came back down off where the people was. And wherever, it doesn't tell us where they went, said they got in the boat and they slipped away and hid. And when they got refreshed, they come back. And the people saw them departing, and many knew him and ran about afoot thither out of all the cities, and outwent them, and came together unto them. So much for that idea. Right? You come home from work, you want to lay down, everybody knows an afternoon nap does you good, right, John? So you come home, want to get that afternoon nap, and can't find no place to be still. Peace and quiet. Sometimes you go to the other end of the house, they follow you. I'm getting the look. Johnny, would you come sit right here? And if I just nod, you go ahead and get up before she comes hits me, all right? And Jesus, verse 34, when he came out, saw much people, and was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. Now, think about this. He's tired and weary. The disciples are tired and weary. And they try to slip away to get that rest that we said that they need. But the people follow them. Now, yeah, I would say, boys, let's go back. Keep going. You understand what I'm saying? You know, let's go around the next point. Maybe we can get there before they do. Maybe there's a big high wall, you know, they can't get to where we're at. We'll anchor there and just sit in the boat where it's peace and quiet. But Jesus sees these people as sheep. In other words, they're wandering with no one to lead them, no one to guide them. That's what the job of the shepherd is. Number one is to lead and guide them. No one to protect them. The wolves, or the religious people of that day, had their way with these people. Remember, they weren't teaching from the Scriptures. They were teaching the traditions of the fathers. And they would lay... We learn in Matthew that they would lay, he said, woe unto you scribes and ye Pharisees, ye hypocrites, for you lay heavy burdens upon these people, but you won't as much as even lift your little finger. So they're taxing them. They're putting all these rules and regulations upon them that the Bible doesn't call them for. Let's understand something about Christianity. Christianity is not a burden.
Amen.
If living a Christian life is a burden, you're serving the wrong God. Jesus come and took our burdens away from us that we might enjoy life. Because there's enough trouble on the outside of this door. Right? Or on the outside of our house when we go out to work or whatever out there in the world. I mean, it's a cruel place. There's wolves, there's snakes, there's thieves. All these things have access to these sheep because they have no shepherd, and he has compassion on them, and he gathers them in to himself as their shepherd, and he feeds them. No good shepherd will leave their sheep hungry. They will feed them before they feed themselves. All right? And when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him and said, This is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Send them away that they may go into the country round about, into the villages, and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. So he has given them heavenly bread. He has taught them the word of God, the bread of life. And now the disciples come to him and say, Master, you know, the sun's about ready to set. It's a long way back to town. You better let these people, you better dismiss church right now. Let these people get down to Wendy's before they close. Just to throw that out there, that's what we would say something like today. Notice what Jesus says in the next. And he answered and said unto them, Give them to eat. Now, all right, there's 13 of them. And they've just come from the village trying to find a place to rest. What are they going to do? I mean, you think about this. If you're one of them disciples, you're going to look at him like, with what? How? Right? Jesus says, you feed them. Don't send them away. You feed them. And they said unto him, Shall we go and buy 200 pennies worth of bread and give them to eat? Now that's 200 days' wages, by the way. That's quite a bit of money in that time. So let's say that they had 200 pennies worth, 200 pennies to buy bread with. Number one, remember what time it is? The day is far spent. It's evening time. So the marketplace is shutting down. They better pretty well be out of bread. Am I right? I mean, you're going to have fresh bread in the morning, but if they've got any bread there now, it's getting stale. It's been out in the hot sun all day long. It ain't going to be much. I mean, shall we go buy 200 pennies worth of bread? And he said to them, how many loaves have ye? Go and see. And when they knew, they said, 5 and 2 fishes. Now, when we think about, we're not talking about Heiner's bread here, big king-size loaves of bread that, that I have 25 slices, I think, or something like that, 20 or 25 slices of bread in a loaf of bread that you buy in the store. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a disc that's probably about yay big. We're not talking about a big pan of bread that's yay high and this long. We're talking about a little disc of bread that's probably about this big. That's their loaf of bread, and they would break it and eat it. The old timers used to call it a pony bread. Right? Me and Katie know these things. No, Katie. We're old timers. So they have 5 of them, and they've got 2 fish. And he commanded them to make them to sit down by companies up on the green grass. Now, I want you to notice this. He organizes things. Another one of the Gospels tells us that they're companies of 50. I don't remember whether it's Luke or whether it was Matthew. Don't think it was Matthew, but I'm pretty sure it's Luke. They sat down by companies of 50. Actually, it's in the next verse. And they sat down in ranks by hundreds and by 50s. And when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven and blessed and brake the loaves and gave the disciples to set before them, and the 2 fishes divided he among them all. Now, I ain't figured this out yet, have you? You've got 5 loaves, you've got 12 disciples, and he divides 5 loaves of bread. Let's say he takes that 5 loaves of bread, breaks it in half, gives one a half, and gives another half. There's 10. And then he gives one disciple the fish and another disciple a fish. That's everything that they've got. And they've got all these companies sitting round about. And he says, now feed them. It's not like Jesus took that and threw it in a basket and all of a sudden there was all kinds of baskets sitting around. That's not what we're talking about here. Again, let's say you got half a loaf of this bread, that a piece of bread yay big, and you walk up and you tear off a piece and you give it to Katie, and then you tear off a piece and give it to Jackie, and then a piece to Johnny, and a piece to John, and a piece to Deb, and you just keep breaking off a piece of bread, and there's still bread in your hand. Not even looking down, and the bread's still there, and they keep dividing this fish up and giving this. Now, how Jesus divided the fish, I don't know. He had to have a knife somewhere. I don't think he took his hand and karate chopped it. He had a knife somewhere, and he probably, cut it up, and, you get, ever how he did it. It was amazing, right? Because I mentioned we were been studying there about the manna, and I told you a couple of weeks ago that David Jeremiah said it took 450 tons a day of manna. God's not raining fish and bread right here, folks. God is taking what little bit is there and multiplying it.
It's just like the woman that was digging in there after the flour and the oil, never went dry. In the Old Testament.
Or the widow that Elijah said, what do you got? She said, I've got a cruse of oil. I've got one little pot of oil. Said, borrow every vessel. Now, a cruse is a small bottle. I've got a little cruse of oil. That's all I've got left in my name. Borrow every vessel you can. Big pots. And start pouring out of the little ones into the big ones, and filled every big one up, and there were still more. And the Bible said, and the oil stayed. It never did run dry. There was no, can you picture that, holding that bottle up and seeing the bottom of it, and then keep pouring oil out of it? I mean, people think, that's the ridiculous. That is humanly impossible for that to happen. But it's not heavenly, though.
That's right.
That's what we're talking about here.
He's able to divide them 2 fishes to all of them.
And they did all eat and were, what's that next word? Filled. They eat. We pulled in, and I told Dave, standing back there, and we pulled in, and Ronda said, look, so there's some of her chicken. I said, they better hurry home. That bunch of Baptists will throw them in the frying pan. They were filled. There was not one of them walked away hungry. God met every need. They were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fishes. Notice that word fragments. I told you, he took the bread and he broke it. And he gave it, and they kept breaking off piece after piece after piece. And there was more. 12 baskets. They only started out with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And they that did eat the loaves were about 5,000 men. That's not counting women and children. And straightway he commanded his disciples to get into the ship and go to the other side unto the Bethesda, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to what? Pray. Let me ask you this. What would Jesus pray? He's God. I know who he would pray to. Oh, my Father. All right, so we know who he prays to. What did he pray?
For his will.
Imagine, if you will, you've just fed 5,000 men besides the women and children with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He's had this multitude come to him, and as sheep having no shepherd, and he does what a shepherd does. He feeds them spiritually and physically. He meets their needs inside out. He heals whatever the need is. I think he thanks God for the opportunity of being there that day, to see the 5,000 fed, to see the miracles, to be thankful that those sheep came to him. Because I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of times that I sat down and God, I thank you for the privilege of pastoring. And I think he was thankful.
I think we need to be thankful for when we even start our first thing.
I think it all be to the glory of God, right? All right, let's go to 47. And when even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. So he's on the land, whether it be the mountain or the seashore. It doesn't tell us here. It just says he's on dry land. They're in the middle of the sea, Sea of Galilee. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the 4th watch of the night he come unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. So picture this. He sees them from the land in the middle of the sea. They're trying to row across. I mean, if you're lucky, the wind's right, you can lift your sail up and it'll flow across. So the sail is down, the winds are wrong because, anybody ever try to row a boat row into the wind? Or even with a trolling motor, Charlie, it'll kill a battery right now. If I'm fishing and the wind's blowing, whether I like it or not, or like the direction or not, I will affix my boat that I don't have to, all I have to do is steer it right or left, but the wind will push me. Because you're not going against that wind. Smith Mountain Lake is a big lake. I don't know if anybody else has been there besides me and Rhonda, but it's a big lake. And when you get out on them points at night, and you come, it's calm as can be, and you come around the point, and boom, all of a sudden you stop. And you're going backwards. Now I realize there's trolling motors big enough to do whatever, but we're not talking about trolling motors. We're talking about fellows in a boat, and they're trying to paddle, fighting the winds and the waves. They were contrary. They were kept, one step forward and 2 steps back. It's like trying to climb the mountains down in West Virginia. Especially, here's the clue. If you ever decide to go to West Virginia and go mountain climbing, don't climb straight up. Go on an angle. Zigzag to the top.
Even on your heels here in Ohio.
Even on your heels here in Ohio, I ain't going to
climb that thing straight up on.
But down there, some of them, there's some places are so rocky, Brother Charlie. I know what it's talking about when you know what I mean? You step up and you just slide back because there ain't nothing there but loose rocks. Some of the biggest disappointments in the world, Brother Charlie, Katie knows what ginseng is. Anybody else, Charlie and Katie? You get up there and there stands a big old 4-prong. Oh my Lord, have mercy. Man, that thing's going to be big. But the only problem is it's in them rocks. And it's growing on top of one of them little rocks. And the roots about as big as your finger. But it's all got a lot of top. I'm disappointed. All right. He sees them. And he goes walking at the 4th watch. What's the 4th watch of the night? Somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Jesus, that's the 4th watch. So they left at dark. They've toiled all night, and they're just to the middle. They're tired. They're weary. They're wore out, if you haven't. And Jesus, instead of going to the ship and says, boys, do you need any help? I'm going to tell you something. If you're sitting there and you're trying to roll that boat like this, and somebody walks up beside of you and says, what's going on? You're going to be scared to death, right? But Jesus made as he would just go by. Went by him just enough where they could see him walking on the water. And when they saw him walk upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit and cried out. I screamed like a girl. And right in the middle of what, John? In the middle of the water, the moon, there's maybe a little bit of moon out there. I don't know. Probably cloudy, actually, with the way this wind's describing here. But, you can just see something. What in the world? I could have walked on water too. like in the cartoons, right? For they saw him and were troubled, and immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. So, why didn't he go straight to the boat? Huh? Well, here's why. If he goes to the straight back boat, like I said, he'd have scared them fellows to death. It scared them bad enough, them out here. I mean, honestly. So he as he's going off to the side of them, and they see him, and they're scared to death. Now picture this again. They've been 3/4 of the night in the middle of this sea. I mean, think about it. They just came back in. Remember, they're trying to find a place to rest. The multitude follows them. So they're tired and weary before they even start going across. Now they've wrestled the wind all night long with no help. You ever get that way in life? Seem like you fight and you fight and you fight and you pray and you fight and you read and you study and you fast and you fight and you're just not getting anywhere. Anybody besides me? Jesus came walking, and it scared them more, and he said, "It is I." I've always found that when I get to that place that I'm scared and don't know what to do, that's where they're at.
They were troubled.
He whispers peace. And I'm going to tell you, that it is I, be not afraid. It might not have calmed the winds at that moment, but it calmed the men. Yes. And that's more important than calming the winds and the waves. He will do that. And he went up unto them in the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered, for they considered not the miracles of the road, for their heart was hardened. In other words, they forgot what he had done back there, the miracle that he had done back here. Now they're just amazed. Again, they're in the middle. They've been out here all night. How do you know where they're at? How did he get here? You going to tell me you walked from there to here on the water? And not only does that, when you get in the boat and everything's still now, it makes a difference when Jesus comes on the scene.
Yes, it does.
And when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret and drew nigh to the shore. And when they were come up out of the ship, straightway they knew him, and ran through the whole region round about, and began to carry about in beds those that were sick, where they heard he was. And wheresoever he entered into villages or cities or countries, they laid the sick in the streets and besought him that he might touch, if it were but the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. We ought to underline that, highlight that, or whatever. As many as touched him. Not as many as he touched. As many as touched him. Sometimes you and I got to reach out to the Lord. Not just cry out. It's good to cry out and good to have God to come and answer our prayers. But sometimes we've got to reach out to him and to touch him to get what we need. And that's what happened. I mean, you think about this. If the crowd is around him, how are you going to get all these beds to him? I mean, they're not going to do like Ernest Angley. They're not going to form a line and just bring them all up across the stage here and allow Jesus to heal them as they go across. They laid them along the streets and allowed them to reach out and to touch him. Now let's say the crowd is pretty good around Jesus. You know what that tells me? They had to put forth some effort themselves. I mean, somebody had to get them to where they could get close enough. But once they got to a certain point, they had to help themselves. Sometimes life knocks us down. And God will help us get up. But sometimes we got to roll over ourselves. We can't just lay there and play dead. Can't roll up like a possum and just lay there. We got to move. Amen? All right. Any questions or comments on those verses?
Noticed there in 39, it said, he set them down by 50s and on green grass, but we're in a desert place.
I really think what it means when it talks about a deserted instead of actually a desert. I mean, because we're by the seaside, all right? And I know and you know that there's going to be enough mist come up off that sea that there's going to be some grass there. You know, out in the desert there would be no grass. It would be dry. So I think really when it's talking about a deserted place, in other words, there was no houses or villages there. All right. Any questions or comments? Did you hear anything back from Joe?